Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Brotherhood Paratrooper. That's the guy you can see on screen right now, and as always I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. What we are going to take a look at today was actually a subscriber request, which I always love to do. I actually have another one coming up soon, and this time around, thank you very much for Museum for the idea. And pretty much the whole idea of the build is that we wanted to make a berserker character, which in and of itself is always a interesting topic, in my eyes at least, but with the twist that we are basically mixing in defensive capabilities and pretty much unyielding benefits from a low health build. And the idea behind this is that, as you can probably know, the moment you're doing a low health build, usually you will see people eradicate themselves up to like 90 or more likely 80% of their health being gone, and at that point you are in the nerd rage threshold. And you can benefit from stuff like serendipity and get a lot of extra special stats from unyielding armor and so on. And yeah, at that point, I mean, we all know why this playstyle is so beloved and so great. It's just a really good playstyle in general. And when it comes to Berserker's builds, actually a lot of what you can do for low health builds can be really helpful when it comes to Berserker's builds. Mainly the extra defense and everything. Now, the only problem I had with this whole premise is, I mean, you needed to do something to make it like a sensible decision, because if we were to say like just basically do a low health build and slap on a berserker's weapon so you don't use any armor at all, it's just a more hardcore version of a bloodied build, to be honest, because you're missing out on a little bit of damage using berserkers rather than a bloodied weapon at that point. And obviously, as you always do if you're not using a bloodied weapon, I should add. But in addition to that, you're not really getting any benefit from it compared to just going for a bloodied build. So the way I wanted to do this is something I actually had in my mind in the past, which was kind of a self-governing bloodied build. And what I mean by that is pretty much the only reason people would not want to do a bloodied build in this game is either to say that you don't want to do it for role-playing reasons, just because you're not particularly a fan of meta stuff and you don't like the idea of being completely eradicated for most of the time, or that you say some people just don't like the micromanagement part of this, of the low health builds, which I can totally get behind. And by the way, perfect start. I wanted to address this earlier, but obviously this is not the pinnacle of any build. It's a challenging build for sure. I mean, this was clear from the beginning. But of course, exactly now when we do a build like this, pretty much the tankiest enemy that could possibly spawn on my road actually comes up, which is a level 100 Sheep Squatch legendary. Yeah, on day-to-day stuff, like if you're not fighting a boss, I think there's nothing more challenging than a legendary 100 Sheep Squatch. I mean, in terms of damage output, they're not that crazy. There's actually worse threats in the game, but they're really tanky. So this definitely is a challenge, and I mean, not really a challenge. I could keep more distance just by hopping over this fence here and easily stay alive. But yeah, it's just a chore to grind him down at that point. But on the other side, we do actually get benefit from our nerd rage, from our adrenal reaction at that point, and yeah, that will help with damage. So you can already see we're doing a lot better now. Since we are still a Berserker's character, meaning we have no armor whatsoever, doesn't hurt to use a stim pack every now and then, but as you can see, for someone running around completely without armor, we're actually doing pretty fine. And this demonstrates really well what this build actually ended up doing, which is basically being a Berserker's character for the most part. So like in most shorter encounters where we just gloss over some ghouls or something like we did at the Brotherhood, no, Brothers of Dane compound or whatever it's called, you will just overwhelm enemies in day-to-day stuff, and you don't have to worry about being eradicated or anything. You can just easily mow most enemies down before they can even do something to you. But the moment fights start to get tougher, like with this sheep squad here, you will, due to the fact that you will lose health during the fight, you will also gain a lot more defensive capabilities and damage. And still, you could just do this exact build with a bloodied weapon, which is what I had in mind in the past when, as I said earlier, I was thinking about doing something like this. But using a Berserker's weapon here is kind of a compromise. So for the most part, when you're playing and you're just doing your day-to-day stuff, you will be better off as if you are using a bloodied weapon, obviously, just because you do have a 50% damage bonus from the get-go, which is great. And yeah, that, as I said, will be enough in most situations to just overwhelm enemies. And the moment you get tougher fights, you still will see a benefit, not from the legendary effect of your weapon, but just from having lower health and getting into nerd rage threshold, and also getting benefits from your adrenal reaction mutation. And all of this is done without you actively having to micromanage your health whatsoever, other than maybe take a stim pack here and there to keep yourself alive. And yeah, once you're done with the fight, you will automatically heal back to full health, so that the occasional stray bullet in a fight will not immediately be danger to you, but rather help you out. So overall, I think it is a pretty hard concept overall, but I hope I made it understandable. And as for you, for the museum, I hope this is something that kind of hits the spot that you were thinking about. I'm not entirely sure, but as I said, I really hope this build satisfies what you had in mind. And now let's talk a little bit more about the build itself, because so far I only spent all of my time talking about the premise of the build and not really much about how it plays out. And when it comes to how it plays out, I actually had a lot of fun with it. Now, one thing I quickly mentioned when I was fighting the sheep squad, obviously this is not going to be the strongest build in the world, not the best build overall, but that was never the goal, really. The goal was to make a fun build, make a berserker work. Maybe you have a good berserker weapon lying around, but don't really want to do a berserker character, a typical one. And as I said, berserker characters have always had a special place in this game for the simple fact that they are, in my eyes, probably the most challenging builds to do. Because, yeah, doing a low health build, while you are being a glass cannon, you can improve your tankiness a lot, and the stat bonuses you get means you are super efficient at stealth and everything. So low health is arguably way easier than being a berserker's character. Not having any armor on you will make you way more squishy than having just 20% of your health but have armor. So yeah, they always have been the most challenging builds in my opinion, and all that for not the greatest payoff. Like, don't get me wrong, 50% extra damage to your weapons is a great buff, but on the other side, there's other effects that can do that. By the way, my free aim is terrible, as it always is. And yeah, talk about junkies, for example. It's a good example in my opinion because it has always been in the game and has always been so much easier, because you will pretty much always find 5 camps to get addicted to that don't really do anything bad for your build. And even if so, we're talking about -1 to a single stat in most cases, or -10 to damage resistance or something like that. So really not the world. It's no crazy debuff or anything. and for most situations, yeah, you get the same benefit as you do with Berserker. Now, talking a little bit about other benefits than just raw damage that Berserkers has, it's already getting kind of flimsy, but one benefit I can think of, which is something I can get behind, is maintenance. So when it comes to a Berserker's character, and by the way, for obvious reasons, I approach the situation here a lot more carefully than I usually do, because this guy here melts through our non-existing defense really fast. And being a VATS build, as you can probably already tell so far, second death in the video, so we really have a little bit of bad luck when it comes to our enemies here. We're pretty much facing the toughest stuff that can happen here now. First, the Sheep Squatch, and when it comes to the Assault Run, it's always like a 50-50 chance if he's there. Like, most of the times he is there, to be honest, but yeah. Don't let this fool you into thinking that the build isn't capable of just doing most of the game. Like, in normal situations, I rarely encounter stuff that I can't handle, so I specifically always choose this specific route here, because we encounter a wide variety of enemies, including some tough ones like the Assaultron. And the Assaultron always is the defense check, to be honest, for my build. And yeah, the moment you do face an Assaultron while being a VATS build, it's gonna get tough if you can't overwhelm it quickly enough. Now, one thing you can easily do, and which I would do in most situations whenever I'm just casually playing, I always have some grenades on me for situations like this, because they actually work really well against stuff like Assaultrons. But obviously when I'm doing videos, most of the times I'm trying to do all of the challenges here with my build, so you can really see the strength and weaknesses of them. And yeah, back to the topic, where have we been? Yeah, maintenance. When it comes to Berserker's builds, one big benefit they do have, and this time around I'm going for the legs, which probably was the more sensible decision, would have been to begin with. I always find it funny, by the way, how you can shoot non-existing legs of a Assaultron. Like, if you shoot it and then the leg breaks off, you can still shoot it and do damage. But yeah, not having to repair your armor for pretty obvious reasons, I would say, is, in my opinion, a big benefit to Berserker's characters. Now, repairing armor has been less of a chore in late game, obviously. Most of you will have access to a lot of ballistic fiber, like a lot of choices when it comes to high-end armor doesn't even require ballistic fiber, so it's not the end of the world to repair your armor, but it is a little bit of a chore. So not having to bother with that, for the obvious reason that we are playing as a Berserker's character, and all we care for when it comes to armor is we want to wear it until it breaks and then don't unequip it, and therefore we still get the legendary benefits. In this situation we do have unyielding armor, which at the moment at full health does absolutely nothing for us, but the moment we will get damaged, we will get stat boosts. This helps with our relatively low AP and our not so spectacular perception, so we're just getting a more efficient fighter overall. On top of that, as I mentioned earlier, we do get extra benefit, extra damage from our mutations and everything. So yeah, the only thing it doesn't boost is endurance, which could be great help for us, just increasing our health pool, but for obvious reasons that's not something that will happen. And while we currently look like we have way less health, like tankiness left, survivability, we are at our most survivable state. We do have the Serendipity perk, which gives us a like 40% chance to reduce incoming damage to 0, and we do have extra tankiness from Nerd Rage. And as you see here, the moment we end our encounter, we do get back to full health, which means, in fact, yes, we do get less stats and less damage, but have a little bit of a buffer. So overall, I think you're getting the point of this build. Is it the best approach to doing something? I wouldn't say so, but it's actually fun and plays a lot like, yeah, like a more casual action game, I would say. So you do have your typical health regeneration. You're not super tanky, but you're not super flimsy either. It's a lot of fun. Now, in hindsight, one thing I regretted doing on this occasion is actually the weapon choice. So we haven't talked about it yet, but we do have a Berserker's 50 crit damage, 25 less VATS AP cost. How's it called? God damn it. Crusader pistol. Like, why the fuck did I didn't remember that? With a pyro modification, but that's not really the point here. Now, the thing is, obviously, that means we are playing as a gunslinger. And since this is a pretty challenging build to begin with, choosing one of the weakest classes in the game, weapon classes, was not the brightest decision. Now, I really overall dig the aesthetic that we came up with here. It's great. I really like it. It's the Brotherhood civvies. It's a flight helmet, parachute, backpack. Just works together really well, in my opinion. Gives us this crash pilot paratrooper kind of vibe. And yeah, as I said, I kind of regret the weapon choice here. In hindsight, I would have rather gone for something like like a commando character. Going for a pretty strong weapon class to begin with, to build off of, so we can really take advantage of our general playstyle here. Overwhelming DPS, killing stuff quickly, and in tougher situations getting even more dangerous while being relatively flimsy. I think it would have worked really well with something like a handmade rifle or so, and in that situation I could also have benefited from perks that I'm missing a little bit, like dodgy, and I would have had more room in luck also for stuff like ricochet. So I kind of screwed myself over here because I really needed to go for crits more than I ideally would have liked to. And especially, yeah, agility is a really good stat, just due to dodgy. So yeah, I screwed myself a little bit over by making the build extra challenging using a pistol, but on the other side, I really wanted to make another build using the Crusader pistol for a while. I love the aesthetic, how it turned out, and overall, being some kind of a crash pilot fits the build thematically really well. We're always barely surviving encounters, but still are dangerous, so you kind of get the point, I think. And as you saw there, I mean, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, just because dying in a video twice is not something that happens regularly here, but I think both of these deaths were pretty understandable and relatable due to the fact that, yeah, I mean, fighting a sheep squatch, level 100 legendary version, no less. Yeah, as I said, you can easily survive it usually, but I could have also on this occasion. I just didn't watch my health, so yeah, that was no shameful thing, I think. And the Assaultron, I mean, these guys can be a pest. So overall, for the fact that we are not wearing any armor, I think we actually done pretty well here, and I had a lot of fun with it. And in stuff like West or White Spring, pretty easy. I really don't have a lot of problems here. And yeah, I think that was it. I hope you enjoyed it so far, and now we're going to take a look at the build itself, starting off with our mutations here. And the first one shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I have talked a lot about it, Adrenal Reaction. Now, ideally, I would have liked to have Class Freak in this build, but I didn't really have the perk points for it, so I couldn't do it. So that way, we do have a pretty hefty debuff to our character, minus 50 HP. Usually not the world, but since our complete survivability basically comes from perks and our HP pool, on this occasion it wouldn't have hurt to reduce that debuff, but we have to live with it. On the plus side though, weapon damage at low HP, so that's pretty good. Bird Bones was pretty obvious, and so was Eagle Eyes. We are a VATS build, so extra agility, crit damage, and perception is nice to have. Healing factor, no, you could definitely live without it. This also means that if we are healing with Stimpaks, we have a pretty significant debuff, but this is not something I found too dramatic, because getting our health up again by 30% is already pretty great. 30, 25%. You can just spam them, so overall it's not the end of the world, and it really makes this fluent, self-governing switch between being a low health build and being a full health build work very well. So that's why health regen is there. Herbivore. This was a decision I just made because I thought about increasing my damage here with stuff like Blight Soup, but that's just an option you do have. I haven't used it within this video, so just keep it in mind. Probably the better choice to go Herbivore than a Carnivore here. And then we do have Marsupial and Speed Demon. More jump height, carry weight is also nice, but not the most important thing here. More reload speed, pretty important here. We didn't really have the luxury of having faster reload on our weapon. In addition to that, the I forgot it again, Crusader pistol, to my knowledge, doesn't have a modification that increases your reload speed, and it's not a crazy fast reload speed to begin with, so increasing it by a little bit with Speed Demon definitely was a good choice here. That being said, we're now moving over to our equipment, and here it is. Berserkers, Vets Crit, less Vets cost, Pyro Crusader Pistol, Pyro Receiver, just felt like the best damage option here. I mean, we could go for 556 ammo for 79 ballistic damage, but no other ones, which felt relatively weak. Fusion modification is kind of, people like it, I also like it, but I wanted to go with Pyro for no particular reason here. I just liked it aesthetically, and it's one of the better ones. Personally, I always prefer the Cryolator one, just because it gives you the added benefit, which would have been handy fighting the Sheep Squatch, where you can freeze tougher targets. Would have been handy on this occasion, but I just wanted to mix up things a little bit, because last time I have showed the Crusader pistol, I used the Cryolator barrel, so yeah, receiver, sorry. But yeah, that's it. In terms of barrel, the only modification to my knowledge is the standard long barrel, which just gives it more range at the expense of some accuracy, but I fiddled around with both versions, the standard short barrel and the standard long barrel, and ultimately I went with the long barrel. I found it more pleasing in terms of how it played out, so yeah, that's why I used that. Large magazine, to my knowledge, just increases your magazine size from like 12 to 18, I think. Reflex sight, pretty much a no-brainer. Reduces your AP cost and gives you a little bit of extra accuracy. And yeah, muzzle options, the only one would be a suppressor, which, I mean, you could slap it on. It probably decreases your range a little bit. I didn't really check because I didn't want to use it, but you could slap it on and make use of stealth a little bit, just because you're having relatively high agility, and obviously with unyielding armor, if you're getting damaged, you will have up to really high agility, so your sneak skills are pretty good. So you could bake in a little bit of a stealth gameplay here. I mean, you also saw me do it during the video, but it won't make a whole lot of a difference unless you really lean into it, and at that point you need another build. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Sadly, I don't have access to a skin. I feel like there was a skin for this weapon in the past, but I couldn't find it, so doesn't really matter here. And then in terms of armor, this is something I haven't really touched during the video, just because there was a whole lot to talk about in this one. But I'm actually using solar armor, which is an interesting twist here, because one thing you most likely have never seen before is a combination of solar armor and unyielding, just because when you are above 60% health, you will get passive healing from solar armor, even when you are in a fight, which is the difference to stuff like healing factor or the healing legendary effect. Obviously, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense in use with unyielding, because usually when you see people use unyielding, they want to go really low with their health, down to like 20%, at which point you're losing the set bonus from your solar armor. But I really like solar armor as an option for a Berserker's build, because you still get the benefit of the set armor even if the armor is broken, as long as it is equipped. So it just adds a little extra layer of tankiness, and while it doesn't sound like crazy, like a lot, or you won't actively notice it, it definitely makes a difference. Like, I have fiddled with Berserker's characters in the past, and really the healing from solar armor makes you more tanky as long as you are in that high health region. So for most of the standard encounters, you will be tanky enough to survive them, and I think it's due to solar armor helping. And yeah, once you're going down lower with your health, you're losing the set bonus from solar armor, but at that point you will be more efficient overall due to your unyielding effect. So it really is a lot of compromise within this build, but it's basically the premise about the whole build. So I hope you get the point here. And when it comes to modifications, obviously it was pretty easy. We do need nothing in order to increase our resistances, because we want our armor to be broken, so we have 0 resistances anyways, and that's a good thing. So the only thing I had to do was slap in some miscellaneous modifications, and I went with ultralight for all my limbs for getting a little bit of extra agility, action points, and dense for our chest piece, just because I did have fireproof on from the beginning, and I went with ultralight on chest piece for a bit of time. But explosions still have been a little bit too dangerous to me. Like whenever I have been in the nerd rage threshold, something like a fat man or something could easily one-shot me. And now with dense in combination with fireproof, that danger is more or less eliminated. I mean, we can still, due to not having any resistances, die to explosions, obviously, but they really aren't a big threat anymore. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about the armor. Other than unyielding, sadly, there's nothing really. I was really missing 1 or 2 pieces of armor with the powered legendary effect, so we have better AP refresh. This was really my biggest gripe with this build, just because I'm so used to using AP refresh armor pieces, that whenever I don't do on a VETS build, I just feel slowed down in a lot of situations, even though it's arguably not happening a lot of times. But yeah, that's a little bit of a gripe here. And when it comes to our aesthetics here, the only thing I mean, I do have under armor here, but it's just, I mean, we might as well drop it. It doesn't do anything. It's not shielded. It would have been nice to have that extra endurance from Secret Service under armor, but sadly, in this case, shielding under armor does give it an armor rating. And in terms of Secret Service under armor, I'm pretty sure it's like 15 damage resistance, which we then would have to downgrade using addictions to Medics or Psycho, which give you -10 DR each. But then we do get to a technical that you will never see stat of -5 damage resistance, and at that point, for some reason, this then goes back to making your Berserker's effect less effective. So, long story short, would have been reducing our damage output if we would have used shielded under armor, and therefore I didn't really bother with it. You will find combinations that have like 20 damage resistance, so you can actually perfectly diminish them back to 0 with the right addictions, but that was a lot of trouble for not a lot of outcomes. So yeah, Brotherhood civvies here, I really, since today these came out, and these should be available to everyone who was playing the Brotherhood quest line. I really love the outfit. It's really cool. I'm a little bit pissed that they made it part of Brotherhood attire, because it's just a really cool outfit, and I always hate when they do this and make it faction affiliated. But yeah, it worked out really well. And yeah, we do have the parachute backpack with the chemist modification and the yellow flight helmet, which works together really well. I really like the overall aesthetic, and yeah. With that being said, everything that's left is our perks here, starting off with strength. We do have bandolier and blocker. Blocker really was one of those perks that was a no-brainer for me, and I knew from the beginning, no matter where this build would turn, blocker had to be there. It's one of the most effective perks in terms of investment for what it does. 45% less damage from melee attacks is a huge defensive bonus, and it needs to be here for a Berserker character. I can't imagine doing one unless we're doing a stealth character that doesn't use blocker. Bandolier on the other side, this is kind of give or take. You don't really need it. I mean, it's just 2 perk points, so no big downside having it here. but ultimately it's not needed. When it comes to the Crusader pistol, it uses 10 mm ammo for most receivers, and you don't have to carry a lot. Like 4,000 of them maybe weigh like 20 pounds or something without bandolier, but still, it's not bad to have it. When it comes to perception, tank killer and concentrate fire were kind of the must-haves. These are pretty much the stock standard whenever you're doing a gunslinger with VATS, which in and of itself should be a stock standard for gunslingers. So yeah, increased hit chance after every consecutive shot in VATS, obviously nice. I mean, the damage bonus, I never really mention it just because it's so insignificant. It's just here for better accuracy ultimately, and the ability to target specific limbs. And tank killer armor penetration is what we're after. I mean, the chance to stagger is nice, but it's too low to really be a significant factor. It's all about the armor penetration that comes with it, which also includes pistols, and that's nice to have. And then I slapped on picklock rank 1, 2, and 3 here, just because I wanted to increase my perception a tiny bit, so whenever we are not getting any effect from our unyielding armor, we do have at least a little bit more perception and a better hit chance to begin with. And yeah, that's basically it. Then it comes to endurance. This stat here, for obvious reasons, I wanted to have it maxed out, meaning being that our only defense when it comes to fights are perks and our HP pool. Having a higher HP pool is obviously of great benefit, and therefore, yeah, we do have 15 endurance. Life Giver here to yet again increase our hit points. Ghoulish is one of those defensive perks that often gets overlooked because at first sight it seems very situational, but ultimately when you think about it, a lot of situations that can get a little bit tougher are within areas that do give off a lot of radiation. Think about every single time you are around a fissurecide and are fighting Scorch Beast. Not that they are particularly dangerous enemies. I mean, they're also animals, so that wouldn't have been wrong. But on a Berserker character, they can actually be a little bit of a threat. And having passive health regen on top of every other passive health regen that we do have whenever we are under the influence of radiation is a nice bonus to have. Then we do have photosynthetic, yet again, something that gives us passive health regeneration. I mean, it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so it's not all the time, but if it happens, it syncs in really well with our armor and eventually ghoulish, depending on the situation. Then we do have adamantium skeleton, so our limbs can't be broken. And we do have fireproof here. I already talked about it in combination with dense armor, pretty important for this build. Next on the list is Charisma. I would have loved, obviously, to have Tenderizer here in addition to Lone Wanderer, but on this occasion we do only have room for Lone Wanderer. I mean, this would probably be the 3 ranks of Picklock. You could use them in order to boost your Charisma and use Tenderizer, but I felt like I can live without it. And therefore, yeah, Lone Wanderer, extra AP refresh, and a little bit of extra tankiness. Very much what we need on this character. As I said quickly, AP refresh is a little bit of a problem here. Nothing you couldn't get under control just with better gear, but getting good solar armor is a chore, and especially if you consider that if I would have done it again, I would have then needed to stand in front of like Vault 76 or something and let myself being shot for half an hour until my armor piece is broken, while also healing myself. So yeah, long story short, AP regen good. Going over to intelligence, we do have gunsmith here to keep our pistol running for longer, and then a very important perk for this build here, Nerd Rage, which, yeah, as I said, usually you will see this on low health builds. I always like to use Nerd Rage on non-low health builds just as a safety net, and on this occasion here it's a really important one and saved my ass quite a few times. And then we do have agility. This was the stat where I mixed around the most. Now, one thing I was sure I wanted here is to have all the gunslinger perks maxed out. Sometimes, depending on the situation, I do go with rank 1 of each of them, but on this occasion I really wanted to get a lot of damage out of my pistol as much as I could without sacrificing too much elsewhere. So this was a no-brainer here, and then the rest was briefly occupied by rank 5 of Adrenaline and 1 rank of Gun Fu, going all in on damage perks basically, with the exception of Gun Fu to some degree. But ultimately, yeah, I needed to make room for Action Boy here. Yet again, get some AP refresh armor, and this is all not a big issue anymore. But for me, it was necessary. So we are left with rank 3 of Action Boy and a very rarely seen on this channel rank 3 of Adrenaline. And yeah, that's how everything turned out. And lastly, we do have luck here. The Holy Trifecta, Grim Reaper Sprint, better criticals, and here it is, Critical Savvy. Just the stock standard combination of critical effects for every VETS build, in my opinion, unless highly standardized, specialized stuff like shotgunners that use 4-leaf clover rather than Critical Savvy, or you get the point. Or builds with very high action point pools and fast action point refresh, you might want to do something and get away without Grim Reaper Sprint, but usually this is a combination you can't go wrong with. Then we do have Serendipity. Under 30% health, you gain a 45% chance to avoid all incoming damage. Really good perk. I mean, when it's obviously chance based, so you never know, but this can really help you a lot, and you especially gonna feel it if you're fighting something like a behemoth or so, where you notice if they trying to hit you with a bowler and nothing happens. It's a nice feeling. And lastly, we do have Starch Jeans and 1 rank of Ricochet here. Starch Jeans, it's kind of getting on my nerves that we always have to mention it, but yeah, you need it in order to keep your mutations and not get any new ones. And then we do have Ricochet. Ideally, I would have liked to have room to max this out here, just because it's a pretty good defensive perk in a lot of situations, but rank 1 needed to do here. And that leaves us with our legendary perks, which on this occasion are pretty boring because we mostly use them to increase our stats here. 5x perception, agility, luck, intelligence, and endurance, with endurance and agility both being at 15 base, so we do get more passive from these legendary effects. So we do have 20 legendary, 20 agility and 20 endurance each. And lastly, we do have Wad Rats. Would there have been better perks for this build? I mean, possibly, but it's nice to have here and syncs in well with our whole regenerating from ourselves theme. So yeah, that was it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. It was a hot mess of a build. There was a lot going on. I really tried to keep it short, but I think we're at like 40 minutes or something again. But yeah, as I said, there was a lot to talk about. I really hope you enjoyed the build and understood what I was talking about. And yeah, maybe try it out, possibly come up with something better. I can definitely see there being room for improvement when it comes to this build, and see you next time. Bye.